I love the sound of a pressure cooker. Ever since I was a little boy, we used to go visit my grandma and grandpa. They lived up on a mountain. And grandma had a big coal stove, and she used to cook in a pressure cooker. And I just always looked forward to whatever would come out of that pressure cooker. She would make stews and soups and all kinds of things in there. I just loved it. And I use a pressure cooker and have ever since I was young. I think it's a great tool, but I've noticed that a lot of people are scared of pressure cookers. So I decided to do this video to help people understand how they work and why you don't have to be scared of them. They make lots of noises and they have little things all over them. And people don't really understand what all those things do. You know, what exactly is this, and why does it do that, and what is that thing? And there's a lot of fear and misunderstanding about pressure cookers. I have a rule when it comes to social media. If somebody is trying to piss me off or scare me or disgust me, I just ignore them because they don't have my best interests at heart. And there's a good chance they're trying to lie to me anyway. So there's some of that information out in social media about pressure cookers, talking about how scary and dangerous they are, and they're not. They're a tool. You do need to understand some things about them and know how to use them, but there's no reason to be scared of them. So stick with me on this video, and we'll go through the things you need to know to understand how pressure cookers work. Hopefully you'll be able to be comfortable using a pressure cooker in your kitchen and use this great tool. So stay tuned. So this is just a regular pot, and I've got some water in here. And you probably wouldn't call this a pressure cooker, but it turns out that the water in here is under pressure, atmospheric pressure. If we took this pot of water to the moon where there is no atmosphere, the water would just immediately boil off. But here, because of atmospheric pressure pushing down on the water, the molecules stay in liquid. And you have to heat the water up in order to give the molecules enough energy to be able to push out of the liquid. If you were at sea level and you had this pot, you'd have to heat the water up to 212 degrees before the molecules in the water had enough energy to boil. Where I live, water boils at about 202 degrees. And if you took this pot of water up to the top of Mount Everest, you'd only have to heat the water up to about 160 degrees in order to get it to boil. What's going on with that? This is just a regular kitchen scale. If I set it down and put these little blocks on it, you can imagine that for each block I put on there, the kitchen scale would read something. Turns out these weigh about 1/4 of an ounce. So if I put one on there, it'd weigh 1/4 of an ounce. 2 on there, the 1/2 an ounce. 3, 3/4 of an ounce, 1 ounce. And 6 of them would be 1.5 ounces. So the gravity of the earth is pulling down on each of these blocks. So when I stack them on top of each other, the scale feels the weight of each block. And the weight is really just how hard gravity is pulling on the block. Well, it turns out that gravity does the same thing to air. So the air above us is being pulled by gravity. And if you're down at the ocean, at sea level, there's a lot of air above you before you get to space. And gravity pulling on all that air causes the air to push down on us with a force of 15 pounds for each square inch. So that's roughly 1 inch by 1 inch. That's about a square inch. the air above us is pushing on us with 15 pounds. And so the water in this pot at sea level has 15 pounds of air pressure pushing on it to prevent the molecules from boiling out of the water. And where I live, there's a lot less pressure, and so the water will boil at 202 degrees. There's a place in California that's actually below sea level, and there water boils at a temperature that's higher than 212 degrees. It's even higher than it boils at the ocean. It's lower, and so there's a bigger column of air above you when you're there. It's called Death Valley. When you're in Death Valley and you try to boil water, you have to heat it to over 212 degrees before it'll boil. And that is what pressure cookers do. Pressure cookers increase the pressure on the water so that it boils at a higher temperature. Pressure cookers don't cook your food through pressure. The food doesn't care what the pressure is. But the food definitely cares what the temperature of the water is. If you're trying to cook a potato at sea level, if you put that potato into boiling water, it'll cook at 212 degrees in the boiling water. Where I live, it takes longer to cook a potato because the boiling water is only 202 degrees as opposed to 212 degrees. On Mount Everest, it would take a lot longer. In fact, you probably couldn't even cook a potato because I don't think 160 degrees is even hot enough to cook a potato. But if you can increase the pressure on the water, then you can get it to boil at temperatures above 212 degrees. And the hotter the water is, the faster it'll cook your potato. So pressure cookers allow the pressure to increase so that the water boils at a higher temperature. And it's because the water is at a higher temperature that it cooks food more quickly. If I'm at sea level and I take this pressure cooker, and there's some water in here, and I start heating it up, like we discussed earlier, the water will start to boil at 212 degrees because we're at sea level, and the air pressure at sea level lets water boil at 212 degrees. Now, if I put the lid on the pressure cooker and I keep heating it, and I don't put this piece on the top, then the water will boil. The pressure will still be at 15 pounds per square inch. But if I put this gadget on, they call it a jiggler or pressure regulator, and it stops the steam from coming out, then the pressure will increase. And if the pressure is increasing, like we discussed, then the water inside the pressure cooker will be able to boil at a higher temperature. But we started at 15 psi. We started at the pressure that was outside before we put the lid on. That's where we started. So what the pressure cooker does when we put this on is it starts at 15 psi and then it increases the pressure on the water from there. And with this stopping it from coming out, the pressure inside the pressure cooker starts going up from 15 psi. So what pressure cookers do is they add pressure to whatever the outside pressure is. And where I live, the pressure is only about 12.3 or 12.4 pounds per square inch. So there's less pressure from the atmosphere pushing down on us here where I live. So the pressure cooker here starts at about, say, 12.3 pounds per square inch and goes up from there. Depending on what you're doing with your pressure cooker, you may care about the temperature in the pressure cooker. If you're just cooking a pot of beans, it really doesn't matter that much. If I use this pressure cooker down at sea level and cook a pot of beans, maybe it'll take an hour. And here where I live, maybe it'll take an hour 15 minutes or an hour 10 minutes. It's no big deal. But if you're using your pressure cooker to can with, then it can be important. We'll talk about that separately. But just remember that what a pressure cooker does is it starts off with the atmospheric pressure wherever you're cooking, and it adds to that. And based on that, it allows the boiling point of the water in the pressure cooker to get higher than it is wherever you are cooking. Let's talk a bit about what all these things on this pressure cooker do. This pressure cooker is from the late 70s, maybe 1980, from Presto, American-made pressure cooker. And it is designed, if you use this particular weight, to go up to 15 pounds above atmospheric pressure. So you basically get, at sea level, let's just say it's 15 pounds at sea level, and plus the 15 pounds in here, you would be just about 30 pounds of pressure on the water. And that lets the water boil at about 250 degrees. They do make other weights that you can put on here. You can get a 10-pound weight. You can also get a 5-pound weight. Maybe that's something that is useful to you. I always just use the 15-pound weight. This pushes down on this little pipe, and when the pressure gets high enough, the pressure starts lifting it up, and that's how the steam gets out, and it controls the pressure at 15 pounds inside the pot. So most pressure cookers are similar to this. They have some way to keep the lid engaged on the pot. A lot of them have these scalloped areas around the top, and they will connect with these things that are sticking out. So in this one, you put it on and you twist it, and now you can't lift the lid off. Most pressure cookers have a gasket like this, and that gasket just seals up between the lid and the pot and keeps the pressure increasing. There's one company, an American company called All American, and they are very proud of the fact that their pressure cookers don't have a gasket. They have a machined metal surface that when you put the top on and you clamp it down, it seals that way. This one uses the standard pressure cooker gasket like most pressure cookers do. All right, let's talk about the different features. Almost every pressure cooker made in the last 50 years is going to have something like this little black button here. What this button is a piece of rubber, and if for some reason this pipe got blocked, and so the pressure just kept on increasing rather than getting regulated with the weight on the top. Who knows why, but let's just say it got blocked and the pressure kept going up. Then this button here at a certain point would push through. It's just a piece of rubber, and it would be pushed through, and then the steam would be able to come out around this handle. So that doesn't allow the pressure to get too high. This gadget here is designed, I'll see if I can demonstrate it. First of all, when there's pressure in there, it's up. So it's a visual indication. You can tell that there's pressure in the pressure cooker. It is designed to engage with this little metal piece here. And the way it works, I'll see if I can get it to, it's a little tricky to close it with it up. All right, I got it. Now, with it up like this, it won't let you open it. So I guess people must have in the past opened pressure cookers while there's pressure in them. Well, obviously the water's going to boil over and make a mess, and you can probably burn yourself. So this is a safety feature that prevents that from happening. And remember, this is a 50-year-old pressure cooker. So let's compare it to a more modern pressure cooker. This is a pressure cooker made by a company called Kuhn Recon. It's a Swiss company. It's a very good pressure cooker. It's pretty similar, This piece doesn't come off, but it works in the same way. When the pressure goes up, this raises, and then the steam starts to come out. It also has the same kind of safety feature. It's got a little thing here. And if the pressure gets too high in here for whatever reason, if this gets blocked, then this would pop through and the steam would be able to come out around the side. It also has a couple of additional safety features that this old one doesn't have. This is kind of cool. There's a spring-loaded pusher here in the handle, and when you put the lid on, then that spring-loaded pusher gets pushed back by one of the tabs. But as you start to open it, what happens is that comes off of the tab and it pushes against the gasket and it'll let the steam out. So if you're trying to take this lid off, you can't get it off before that releases the pressure by pushing on the gasket. It also has some cutouts in the side, so if this got blocked and for whatever reason this little button didn't push through, who knows why that would happen, but maybe it could, and the pressure still started going up and up and up and up, then eventually the gasket would be pushed through these holes and the steam would start coming out the holes right here. So there's one on either side. So that's another thing that keeps the pressure from getting too high in this pressure cooker. Now, this old pressure cooker, this Presto pressure cooker, like I said, it allows the pressure in the pressure cooker to get up to 15 pounds per square inch. This one only goes to 12 pounds per square inch. It's not really a problem, but the water in this doesn't get as hot as the water in here gets, based on our previous conversation. But if you were going to use your pressure cooker to do pressure canning, that's when you have to start paying attention to things like that. Now, the recommended temperature in order to safely can food is 240 degrees. So this pressure cooker can do that at sea level, but it can't do it here where I live. Remember that the higher you go in altitude, the less the atmospheric pressure is, and the boiling point of the water is a combination of the atmospheric pressure added to whatever the pressure in the pressure cooker is. So since the pressure here isn't 15 psi, it's less than that. Plus, this only goes to 12 psi. It turns out that when this is at full pressure, it can't quite get to 240 degrees. So this pressure cooker is not suitable for pressure canning at this altitude. This one is. So this one is rated for that. This is not a big deal. If you're just cooking food, it's totally fine. I'm not trying to make it sound like it's not safe. That's not what I mean at all. It's perfectly safe, and the pressure cookers will work fine. This pressure cooker will work fine, and others that only go to 12 psi will work totally fine to cook food, but they're not good for canning if you're at higher altitudes. Most people these days, when they buy a pressure cooker, are buying one of those electric ones. They're a little simpler to use because you don't have to, like on this, once this gets up to pressure, then I adjust the temperature so that it's not pushing a bunch of steam out. It's easy, and I've been doing it for many years, so it doesn't bother me a bit. But the electric ones do that more automatically. Something to think about based on our previous conversation, almost all the electric pressure cookers that you buy these days have about the same pressure as this one, this Kuhn Recon, not this one. There are a few exceptions to that. Presto makes an electric pressure canner, and it goes to 15 psi. And whatever the company is that makes the Instapot, they released an electric one. I think they called it the Max, and it went to 15 psi. But virtually all of the electric pressure cookers that you buy these days will only go to 12 psi, and some are less than that. It's fine, and if you're cooking soup and beans and things like that, pot roasts, it's not a problem at all. It may take a little bit longer than a pressure cooker like this that goes to 15 psi, but it's not a problem. But you do need to think about how hot it'll get if you're planning to use your pressure cooker for pressure canning. Just remember, Some pressure cookers go to 15 psi. Most of the pressure cookers you'll see today go to 12 psi. And pressure canners, especially if you're canning at altitude, need to be able to go to 15 psi. We talked about how pressure cookers actually do what they do. And they do it by increasing the pressure inside, which allows the water to boil at a higher temperature. It's not the pressure that cooks the food, it's the fact that the water inside the pressure cooker is hotter. It boils at a higher temperature than it could boil if it wasn't at pressure. I hope this video was helpful so that you understand how pressure cookers work and what all these buttons and knobs and things do on them, and you feel comfortable using this fantastic tool in your kitchen. Bye.